And we have with us not only members of the Central Texas delegation, we have with us our chairman, Gene Wu, and we have also with us our representative-elect, Cass Hernandez, but everybody will introduce themselves. So we are excited to put forward our agenda for the 89th legislative session. And while we each have our different priorities and our different passions and different expertise, there is one thing that we all have in common. Texas House Democrats work for you. That's right. For too long in this state, the wealth and the riches that have been made on the backs of working Texans have accrued to the top 1% of income earners in this state. The CEOs of multinational corporations, the directors of hedge funds, and yes, even the tech titans. Let me give you an example. In Texas, workers in Texas work more hours than in any other state in the union. And at the same time, we have more people in Texas who are making less than $15 an hour than the national average. So we work more in Texas for less. The last 25 years of complete Republican control have been a beatdown for working families, and Texas House Democrats know the time for change is now. So this session, you will see us fighting for a just economy where a fair day's work is compensated by a fair day's wage. You will see us fighting so that the dream of home ownership is for all hardworking Texans and not just for the wealthy and the private equity firms. You will see us fight to make health care a right and not a privilege, because it is unacceptable that 1 in 4 Texans struggle with medical debt. And there is probably no issue that more unites us and more defines us as Democrats than our belief that every Texas child should have access to a quality public education. That's why last session you saw this group and all Texas House Democrats unite and win against the governor's voucher scam. We will fight to win this session as well. Texas House Democrats know that you work hard. You do your job, raise your family, pay your bills, pay your taxes, and we know that it's government's job to provide the basics you need to thrive in your life. Because Democrats built Texas. Say it with me. Democrats built Texas, but in the last 25 years of Republican domination, the infrastructure we built has crumbled, as have our basic freedoms. This session, you will see Texas House Democrats fight to ensure that the precious taxpayer dollars that you have already sent to Governor Abbott are actually used to fund your neighborhood schools, to keep the lights on, to keep the water flowing. Because Texas House Democrats work for you. Thank you. Next, we are going to hear from my colleague in the Travis County delegation, Representative Lulu Flores.
Excuse me. Thank you, Gina. Thank you all for being here. I'm Lulu Flores, and I proudly represent South and Southeast Travis County, along with East Austin. And so I'm here proudly representing them and my constituents. You know, Democrats stand up for every Texan. Democrats are going to champion policies that uplift and protect the dignity and worth of all Texans, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, educational level, you name it. Republicans fan the flames of hate to pit neighbor against neighbor. We're starting tomorrow, and unfortunately, too many of our Republicans are more interested in wasting people's time with divisive culture war issues. They think that they can win by dividing our neighbors against neighbors, but Democrats want to lift up all Texans with policies that help all of us get ahead. Democrats believe that a free public education is a cornerstone of society that allows everyone to get ahead based on their own merits. But Republicans want to create voucher programs that give away taxpayer money, and I'm going to leave that to my colleague, James Tallarico, to tell you more about that. Texas Democrats want to invest in the public schools, not make sure that we give vouchers to the already wealthy folks to send their kids to schools. Democrats believe that everybody should pay their fair share of taxes, but Republicans want to spend $82 billion so that wealthy property owners will not have to pay taxes. And this will double the sales tax, making lower income Texans pick up the tab for the rich. And nationally, you all know that Donald Trump's agenda wants to continue the 2017 tax cuts, and most of those benefits would go mostly to the 1%ers. Texas Democrats are aware that sometimes racial injustice leads to unfair outcomes for minorities. But Greg Abbott and his Republican allies have eliminated programs that have helped Black and brown Texas get into college and stay in college, more importantly. And those Republicans have banned offices that help students once they arrived and help them feel more welcome in that college environment to feel left alone. And they want to further pressure the state's institutions of higher education to eliminate educational programs that help queer Texans understand themselves and their communities. But because Texas Republicans think that the true victims of discrimination are straight, rich white people, Democrats know that each of us has a different story to tell, that this might mean that some of us need different things that the state might offer us, and that's okay. We recognize that the problems also with the federal immigration system, and I'm not going to get too much into that, are, a lot of them are blown up, and we are spending way too money on the Lone Star, Texas Lone Star program, diverting dollars that could be spent for more important issues, as Gina said. So it's time that we step away, let the federal government do their job, and let us tend to our citizens and our constituents here in Texas. We know that the U.S. is a land of immigrants, and we need to make sure that we welcome those immigrants, like with in-state tuition and things like that, letting our immigrant children be educated, because our future depends on the work that they do. As I said earlier, the Republican culture war is divisive, counterproductive, and frequently flat out mean. Even more than any of those things, though, it is tired. We Democrats believe that Texans deserve something different. So in this upcoming session, we will do everything we can to invest in the freedoms of all Texans, regardless of their income, race, religion, ethnicity, sexuality, or gender, and to reject any Republican attempts to divide us on the irrelevant culture wars. Thank you. And now I'm going to introduce my colleague, James Tallarico, to talk to you more about our public schools.
Thank you, Lulu. My name is James Tallarico. I have the honor of serving as state representative for House District 50, and I'm so proud to be standing here with my Central Texas colleagues. Before I talk about public education in particular, I want to zoom out a little bit. There is something happening here in Texas. Here in the state capitol, a small band of Republicans and Democrats in the Texas House are coming together to stop two West Texas billionaires from taking over our state government. Their names are Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, and they're the biggest Republican donors in the state. They've already bought our governor, they've bought our lieutenant governor, they've bought our attorney general, they've bought our state senate, and now to complete their takeover, they're trying to buy the Texas House. Tomorrow, they'll attempt to get one of their puppets elected speaker. One of our Republican colleagues said, quote, "This is the most corrupt state government in Texas history." And that's saying something. Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks are not just oil and gas oligarchs. They're also Christian nationalist pastors. They've spent more than $100 billion, $100 million. They probably have $100 billion too. $100 million to ban abortion in Texas, to ban books in Texas, and now they're trying to close our Texas public schools with a private school voucher scam. This is bigger than party. This is bigger than partisanship. Texas is too big and too great to be sold to the highest bidder. We cannot allow two billionaires to transform our beloved state into a theocracy. We have to stop them. And public education is going to be the battleground in this upcoming session. So just a quick refresher on what happened last session. That bipartisan coalition of Democrats and Republicans that I mentioned earlier, we held strong, we stayed united, and we beat Greg Abbott's billionaire-backed voucher scam. But in retaliation, Greg Abbott withheld new funding for our public schools. We had a $33 billion budget surplus, and Greg Abbott spent zero of that historic surplus on our students, on our teachers, on our families, and on our schools. It's unconscionable, unimaginable, immoral. Before I was a legislator, I was a public school teacher. I taught on the west side of San Antonio the year after this legislature cut $5 billion from our public schools. I saw firsthand the devastating consequences of those cuts. I saw kids slip through the cracks. And that's happening as we speak, on our watch, quietly in communities across our state because of the decision of our governor and his billionaire mega donors. And so we're going to fight vouchers this upcoming session because it's bad public policy. You often hear the misleading slogan, school choice, but it's not school choice, it's the school's choice. Because private schools can deny admission to any kid for any reason they want. They can deny admission because you don't make enough money, because you're not the right cultural fit, because you don't have good enough academics or good enough behavior. So how is it choice when the private school has all the power? How is it choice when 151 counties in the state of Texas, a majority of counties, don't have a single private school in them? How is it choice when the private school doesn't have to provide transportation to kids whose parents can't take them to school every morning? How is it choice when the cost of the voucher doesn't even cover the full cost of tuition at most private schools in Texas? If you gave my former students in San Antonio an $8,000 or a $10,000 voucher, there's still no way they could afford a $20,000 a year tuition bill. But the family that is sending their kids to a $20,000 a year private school, they're going to get an $8,000 discount or a $10,000 discount. That's why vouchers are welfare for the wealthy. In every state that's tried them, the vast majority of the funding ends up going to rich parents who don't need any help at the expense of working class kids across the state. So vouchers are bad public policy. It's why my colleagues and I are standing united with our Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle to stop them so that we can stand up to Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and their billionaire benefactors. Thank you. And I want to bring up my colleague, Vicki Goodwin.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Vicki Goodwin. I represent the Lake Travis, Western Travis County area. Talking about our policy priorities, it's really hard to narrow them down to the top 3 or 4. Obviously, public education is a top priority, but I am going to talk about some that are very important in my district and throughout the state. Housing affordability, water, childcare, and gun violence prevention. Buying a home is the American dream, yet for too many young people, it is out of reach. My background as a real estate broker has given me a lot of insight into this issue. Market forces are what they are. Right now, the market is moving more in a buyer's favor, but prices have already escalated to where many people don't qualify for the home prices in Austin or around the state, and either have to look further out or wait for a higher income. The majority of Central Texans spend more than 30% of their income on rent. While we can't force prices down, we can do some things to help first-time buyers. We can expand the Homes for Heroes program, which is a down payment assistance program for our first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS. So I have a bill that will expand the professions that could receive this assistance and will expand the income guidelines. Also, the Fair Rent Incentive Act is one of my priorities this session. It would have the effect of putting downward pressure on rent so that our renters can save up and ultimately be able to buy a home. Because I represent the area surrounding Lake Travis, water is top of mind for many of my constituents and the state. This session will focus on new water sources, which can be very expensive. These projects are important, but at the same time, conservation, reuse, and fixing leaky pipes can be less expensive and just as important. Costs for water projects will be passed on to consumers, so we should focus on less expensive projects first. Conservation begins with education, and we're working on a bill to add educational information about our drinking water supply to property buyers. Conservation means allowing things that are water conserving, like xeriscaping, no penalties for brown grass, incentivizing rainwater harvesting, and connecting buildings like the state capitol to purple water pipes. Childcare is another issue that is top of mind for many of us. We hear from childcare providers the challenges they are having staying afloat, and in fact, many have closed in recent years. And we hear from parents the challenge they have paying for childcare. More than 91,000 Texas children are on a state wait list for subsidized care. Texas loses $9.3 billion annually because of childcare breakdowns, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Some people simply don't enter the workforce because childcare is too expensive. Others can't complete higher education or job skills training courses because they lack childcare. I'm filing a bill to create a thriving family fund. I will also continue to pursue policy intended to make our community safer, specifically around gun violence prevention. Last session, we were able to pass the Natalia Cox Act, intending to let people know how they can keep themselves safe when they are being threatened. I hope to build upon that initiative. I also plan to work with survivor families to see where we might move the needle on gun violence prevention. And I'm working with school districts to mimic federal law saying you cannot openly carry a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school campus. And with that, I will turn it over to Representative Donna Howard.
I'm Donna Howard. I represent House District 48 here in Travis County. And we heard what Representative Tallarico had to say about how Republicans and Democrats came together to work on issues that we could find common ground on. And I am looking forward to the agenda that we're laying out here being one that we can maintain our House traditions and work together with our Republican colleagues on areas of agreement that we can find. I'm going to address two issues that are relevant to committees that I serve on, or the first one being women's health care as the chair of the Women's Health Caucus. And our major guiding principle is going to be increased access to health care. Certainly, we know from the past over a decade of working on abortion issues that we have been forced to deal with that in a defensive posture. We don't see that there's a will to repeal that at this point in time. So what we're going to try to do this session is, again, focus on access to health care, but also on clarification of the law that currently exists so we can ensure that those who have pregnancy complications will be able to get the health care that they need to have. We've heard very many instances, of course, of women who have been denied access to care because of the severe penalties that doctors face if they are somehow challenged in the decisions that they were making before these bills were passed every day without any question. We need to make sure that women get the health care that they need. We also want to continue to ensure that there is access to health care in our more remote areas and rural areas and maternal health care desert areas. Half of the state qualifies as a maternal health care desert. We do not have the facilities, we do not have the providers. So we're going to be focused on a lot of the legislation that we can put forward to ensure that we have the pipeline necessary to get especially the primary care providers that we need to serve Texas women and their families. We want to be able to focus on the Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Review Committee to expedite that process and make sure that we have the best information possible to address what are preventable causes of death. The last report we got said that 80% of the maternal deaths were preventable. We need to be focused on how do we keep Texas moms alive. We're also wanting to look at, I know you're going to be hearing from my Representative Busey here, my colleague, on Medicaid expansion, but I want to mention specifically, we are filing legislation to expand Medicaid for women of childbearing age, knowing that if we really want to protect our moms and babies, that we need to make sure they have the health care that they need. Right now, you only can get on Medicaid if you're pregnant. You miss those critical first weeks, maybe months of pregnancy because you don't even know you're pregnant at first. Then you have to file for eligibility to get on Medicaid. Then you have to find a provider. You're losing precious time that is critical to the development of that infant. So expanding that care, making sure moms are healthy when they get pregnant, controlling their hypertension, controlling their diabetes, and have the care they need afterwards to space their pregnancies. All of these things are very important to having healthy outcomes for moms and healthy outcomes for their babies. So those are some areas that we'll definitely be focused on there. I want to also mention the budget, and I'm going to actually use some more notes here because I want to make sure I get all the numbers straight for you. We're going to be hearing from the comptroller very shortly now about the biennial revenue estimate, the money that we're going to have to work with this session. So based on how the state taxes and investment income has been doing recently, we expect to hear that we actually are going to have the resources we need to invest in Texans, to strengthen our public schools and give teachers and other staff pay raises that they deserve, to help more Texans get the health care that they need, to support our public college students so they can graduate without crushing debt, to keep Texans safe, and to support the future economic growth of our communities by ensuring that water, electricity, and other basic services are available. We will have the money to invest in those things. In addition to updating the 2025 ending balance, Comptroller Hager will tell us how much general revenue is available through the end of fiscal 2027. This is what gives us our pay-as-you-go limits, our constitutional limits on what we can spend. Also, we'll have the balanced budget cap on appropriations that we will be using in making our supplemental and general appropriations acts. So once again, as in 2023, we do not expect the revenue estimate to be the limiting factor for the budget, but rather the spending cap is what's going to slow what we can appropriate. So again, the way to get around that is to send constitutional amendments to the voters because those don't count toward the spending limit. So you can expect to see a lot of major budget decisions being made this next November when the voters are going to be asked to vote on constitutional amendments. Okay. So previously, the comptroller told us the ending balance earlier for this upcoming session would be $21 billion. He told us that in July. That was mainly due to underfunding our schools. Any surplus number that you hear also includes constitutionally dedicated funds, earmarked revenue of $7.3 billion that the legislature hasn't spent on the needs that those funds were earmarked for. In other words, the voters said, spend these dollars on this one purpose. Collect this tax, collect this fee, spend it on that one purpose. It's a dedicated fund. 7.3 billion of that has not been spent on its dedicated purpose. It is being used when we have downfalls to balance the budget. We don't need to balance the budget with those funds right now. They need to be spent on their intended purpose or give it back to the taxpayer. Don't keep collecting that tax. Don't keep collecting that fee if you're not going to spend it on the one purpose that it was supposed to be spent on. We can't use that for anything else. We also continued to use federal COVID relief dollars for this current budget that we're in. In fact, the Department of Criminal Justice used $5.4 billion in federal ARPA funds to cover payroll costs. That money is now going to have to come out of the state budget. That money is a part of the surplus because we didn't spend it. We supplanted that money with federal dollars. My point being here, the surplus is absolutely there, but there are a lot of nuances to that with money that is not available to us. I will also suggest that we have to make sure we continue to pay for the $18 billion property tax swap that we made over the past 2 sessions. That is an ongoing expense. $18 billion that we're no longer collecting from local property taxpayers that we are paying as a state. We guaranteed we would do that. We have to cover that. Finally, I'm going to mention the Rainy Day Fund, which has $24 billion in it today and will reach its cap later this year if we leave it unused. It's called the Economic Stabilization Fund for a reason. We should use it when we need to for our public schools, universities, healthcare, public safety. Whenever we have economic downturns, that's what it's for. But we've also been using it for one-time investments that are urgently needed. We already have a state highway fund that gets funding from this. There are other ways that we could use this. I'm suggesting that we create a perpetual fund for water because we know that that's a severe need we have for this state. We have the opportunity to do that. This is our time to do that. We are not going to be able to use these funds if we don't spend them. We have a cap on the Rainy Day Fund. So these are funds that we have available to us that Texans have provided to our state. We need to invest in those things that will help Texans thrive. And that's what Democrats are going to be working for this next session. And I am going to turn it over to Cass Hernandez. Where is she? Right here.
I'm hiding
There
back
she
here.
is.
I'm
Okay.
back here. Thank you, Rep. Howard. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cassandra Garcia Hernandez. I'm actually part of the Dallas delegation, northwest corner of Dallas County. And unfortunately, I can't stand up here with obviously the great institutional knowledge that my soon-to-be colleagues have, but what I can talk about is obviously the top issues in our district that, quite frankly, it doesn't matter what part of Texas that you're from. We're all dealing with the same issues and all of the pains, the frustrations, the financial situation for people across the state. It's being felt all over. And so in my district, one of the biggest concerns, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier today, is as far as the hurt that people are feeling at the doors. I'm honored to stand here with someone who looks like I'm wearing white socks because one of the #1 priorities for me on my campaign was making sure that I knocked on as many doors as possible, sat with all of my chambers, sat with my trustees in my school districts to understand what the issues were for them. And I can tell you the things like insurance, which quite frankly is not usually the most sexy topic that people like to discuss, but it's an important one. Because when we talk about housing affordability, insurance plays into that. I can't tell you how many people within my district, especially retirees, who were feeling that they were most likely not going to be able to remain in their homes anymore because guess what? They can't afford the property taxes. They can't afford the homeowner's insurance for their homes. My city council members, my mayors are concerned about individuals like them who are opting and having to decide between keeping the lights on and paying for their homeowner's insurance. Well, I'm sure that we can all put two and two together and figure out what they're most likely going to end up picking. And so a lot of the cities are very concerned about what is that going to look like for within their areas. What we've been watching, and of course I think everybody here in this room is very heartbroken with what's going on in California right now. A lot of folks don't realize it, but quite frankly, depending on the losses within that state, it is a possibility that insurance companies are able to pass off those losses to other states. And so we need to make sure that we prioritize not only bringing relief in the insurance area for homeowners, but also making sure that we do not pass off those costs on top of what people are already grappling with right now. And then, of course, you know, in addition to obviously homeowners insurance, things like health insurance as well is a top concern and priority. I actually will be filing some bills, and I think we've already filed a couple so far, that continue to keep moving towards the elimination of pre-authorization for things that are just common sense to essentially give people the ability and access to health care. And so all of these things are really important, but it really goes to the bottom line of just showing to what level that everyday Texans are really hurting in this state. And so that's why I'm honored to be here, to be invited to be part of this, but more than anything, to stand with these folks up here. Because I can tell you all over in my district, and it wasn't just Democrats, I talked to Republicans as well, and I'm honored to have had people cross over and support me on things like public education, local control, making sure that we tackle the meat and potato issues that they feel like are not being tackled currently here in the Texas legislature, and our Democrats up here are intending on doing that. So I'm so proud to be part of this group, and I'm looking forward to serving with everyone, and thank you so much for being gentle on my first press conference.
Who do we have next?
Sure.
Oh, and next is Rep. Cole.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to visit us in Travis County. I represent East Travis County from 7th Street east of 35 to Manor and to Pflugerville. I too, like James Tallarico, is going to zoom out a bit, just about the speaker's race. One of the things when I got the call about who to support was that I was told, Cheryl, you've got to understand that this is not about the typical issues that we disagree with Democrats on. This is about the integrity of the House. This is about our Constitution. So I want y'all to think about that as you report on the issues, because there's so many tweets going around that carry a lot of disinformation. I am proud to stand here with my colleagues and fellow Democrats to say, again, that public education is important. The City of Austin, AISD, recently passed a proposition to allow for AISD to raise taxes because they could not afford to maintain many of their programs and pay for teachers. And the citizens of this community elected to do that because of the failure of the legislature to fund our public schools. And that is simply sad. I sit on the Higher Education Committee, and I watched as the testimony came in supporting Senate Bill 17, the DEI bill. And I listened as employees, professors, and members testified as to how important their services were to the whole campus, the whole country, and the whole world. And now we're going back, and we see that the Senate is requiring and threatening colleges even further than the bill allowed. I hope to have robust conversations about that and avoid efforts to take that sentiment, hatefulness, narrow-mindedness even further and eliminate ethnic studies at many of our colleges and universities. I'm going to talk about local issues that are really statewide issues. And we were fortunate enough for Speaker Phelan to bring together a group of Democrats and Republicans to talk about, and this might shock y'all, some things we have in common. And one of those things is housing affordability. And we know right here in Central Texas, it is the worst. And my constituents are very concerned about that. I hope to be intimately involved in moving legislation to do something about it, including slow regulations at the city and also sprawling insurance costs and, of course, property taxes. The other issue, which is Representative Goodwin brought up, is water. And we sat on a committee and talked about what we might be able to agree on with water. And I was pleased that some of my Republican colleagues spoke up and said, we're going to have to negotiate with the Senate, with Senator Perry, on this water bill, because we need to fix the existing pipes that we have. And I'll never forget, my colleague, Representative Sweener, turned around to our colleague and said, you're going to soon discover that the real enemy is not the Democrats, but the Senate. And I thought that was just great. So, guys, thank you for coming, and thank you for the time that you've spent on our issues.
Hey everybody, I'm State Representative John Busey. I'm proud to represent the city of Austin, Cedar Park, and Round Rock, all in Williamson County, just a little bit up the road. I want to thank Chairman Hinojosa and Wu for organizing this. I think it's of note that while Democrats are together here and across the state doing press conferences about how we can serve 30 million Texans, we find the Republicans in the State House in a civil war figuring out how they can make this state a smaller place. And so we're here to give a vision of how we make a better Texas for all. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm proud to be from the city of Austin. This is the city that Texas Republicans love to come to. They love our art, our culture, our food scene, and then they love to go home and tell everyone how much they hated it while they were here. A healthcare crisis doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. But year after year, Republicans continue to block Medicaid expansion, leaving 1.4 million Texans without care. Texans don't choose to have a medical crisis, and they shouldn't have to choose between paying for groceries or paying for health care. But with the highest uninsured rate in the country, that's what Texans are being forced to do every single day. Every Texan who doesn't have adequate health care is vulnerable. This session, Democrats will continue our fight against Republicans who side with special interests and drive up our health care costs, keeping Texans from accessing the care that they need. When Texans don't have to worry about mounting health care costs, they can support the small businesses and industries that make Texas prosper. They can support their families and their communities. Governor Abbott talks a lot about the Texas miracle, but unmet health care needs have many Texans living a Texas nightmare. The Texas miracle starts with taking care of Texans' most basic needs. When our pocketbooks are squeezed, we feel it everywhere. For the past 4 years, Republicans have campaigned on bringing down costs. It's time to stop talking and act. Greg Abbott has chosen time and time again to block affordable care and saddle us with higher costs, but it doesn't have to be this way. I filed key legislation to quickly and efficiently enroll already eligible Texans into Medicaid or CHIP. This is the Children of Texas. We filed legislation to expand Medicaid and bring our tax dollars home and improve 211 to help connect Texans with the care that they deserve. Taxpayers have been footing the bill for Greg Abbott's negligence for far too long. As legislators, we need to be focused on solving the issues that matter most to Texans, fixing the actual problems our constituents face each and every day. This session, Texas Democrats will push past partisan extremism to deliver real results for Texans when they matter most. Together, we will ensure that every Texan has access to the high-quality, affordable health care within their communities. And that starts tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will decide, does Dan Patrick and Ken Paxton control the Texas House, or do the 150 members of the Texas House get to represent their districts and do what's best for the constituents they deserve? I'm ready for the fight, and so are Texas Democrats. Next up, we're going to bring up Representative Aaron Zwiener.
Thank you so much, Representative Busey, and thank you as well to Representatives Hinojosa and Wu for organizing this press conference. I'm Representative Aaron Zwiener. I represent Hays County, just south of Austin, Buda, Kyle, San Marcos, and a good chunk of Dripping Springs. I think what's really sets the people standing up here today apart from a lot of our colleagues in the other caucus is that we're not here to serve our primary voters. We're not here to serve a small sliver of Texas. We believe in the things we believe because we think they will lift the tide for every single person in the state of Texas. That is who we are fighting for every single day. And one of those issues that is on a lot of Texans' minds is our grid and our energy costs. You know, Texas has been a leader in energy for much of the history of the state. First with oil and gas, and then we also became a leader with renewable technologies. Texas has more renewable energy installed than any other state in the country. And that has had real benefits to the state of Texas. It has provided reliable, affordable energy for Texans. But Texans' position as a leader is under threat right now for two main reasons. The first one is a failure of leadership in Texas to invest in the infrastructure we need to keep growing that diverse energy portfolio. And the second is extremist, politically minded attacks on renewable technologies that are innovative and affordable and clean simply because they think those particular technologies belong to a different tribe. We are here today to fight for that infrastructure and stand up against those attacks. So I'm going to say the obvious. Every single Texan deserves a reliable power grid they can count on during extreme weather. And unfortunately, Texas has not lived up to that commitment in the way we should have this decade. We've endured too many preventable crises due to power outages during times of extreme heat or cold. Texas reported over 246 official deaths due to Winter Storm Uri. Some modeling shows the real number is probably over 700. A third of deaths during Hurricane Beryl last year now, were due to heat from people who had lost power and died of heat-related causes in their homes. Fixing the power grid ensures that families can stay safe during those extreme outages. It also supports the Texas economy, and it also helps keep costs lower for Texans. When the grid fails, working Texans face lost wages, higher energy bills, and increased financial stress, and those power outages put lives at risk, especially for vulnerable populations like children, elderly, and those with medical needs. During Hurricane Beryl last year, at least 14 nursing homes and 30 assisted living facilities in Harris County lost power for multiple days. That's just unacceptable. Winter Storm Uri is estimated to have cost Texas between $80 and $130 billion. And again, many of those costs due to the challenges with the grid, and many of those costs falling on everyday Texans. Meanwhile, innovative energy technologies save Texans money while building issues with grid congestion, not enough power lines to carry power to people, are costing Texans money. Since 2018, the average Texan has saved about $200 per year on their electric bill because of our investments in technologies like wind and solar. Overall, ratepayers saved $28 billion from 2010 to 2022. $28 billion saved because of our wind and solar installations in Texas. And now we have new technologies coming online like batteries, and Texans' expansion of 5 gigawatts of new battery storage capacity has saved Texans $750 million since 2023. And those batteries are also part of what is helping make our grid more reliable every single day. Despite that, we still have members of this body who attack these technologies simply because of the type of technologies they are. And that's wrong. We need to be focused on outcomes for Texans, not trying to punish specific industry sectors. In addition, Texans have had more issues with congestion, which is when there are too many electrons on the power line to get to the people of Texas. From 2019 to 2021, congestion costs in Texas tripled, and they rose to $1.6 billion, going back to Texas ratepayers. So we know what the path forward is. We need to continue to protect our innovative energy technologies, both things we have on the grid now, like wind and solar and expanding batteries. And then we also have new promises on the future, like hydrogen, geothermal, that again will continue to diversify the grid, make it more reliable, and save Texans money. And we need to invest in the critical infrastructure so that we can get those electrons, get that power to people in their homes. Democrats will fight every single day on this floor to make the infrastructure investments needed to grow our energy portfolio, allow Texas to remain an energy leader, and we will protect those technologies from culture war style attacks from extremists. So thank you all so much for being here today, and I will hand it over. Oh, no, I will open it up for questions, I guess. Can I stick you back in front for that too?
Okay, well, I'll bring actually our chair, Rep. Wu, to lead us in questions, to lead us. Are there questions?
It was mentioned that the Republicans are fractured. That's self-evident, right? Your caucus has some fractures too on the speaker's race. Representative Raymond came out and endorsed Cook, only one so far for Representative Cook, and then you have your own candidate. What do you make of that aspect of this?
Here's what I know. Democrats in the Texas House are trying to ensure that we have a leader in the House who will stand up for the House and not be the puppet of Dan Patrick or Governor Abbott. And we are all hearing the case from those candidates and their leadership teams to understand who that candidate is, and we will see where the results are tomorrow and how the votes turn out. But let me say this. Democrats have been meeting and talking about what is our shared values, our shared goals, and our shared vision for this session. And regardless of where we end up voting tomorrow, you will see us come together and work towards that shared vision.
Do you want to say who the candidate is who would be the puppet of the lieutenant governor?
Leave that for other people to talk about.
David Cook, yeah. Yeah.
Can you make that argument?
Yeah, I mean, he is beholden to the donors. These donors went and bought primary elections in the Republican primary, and now they are beholden to that vote. I think to answer your question, the Texas Democrats, 62 of us, are making this decision independently based on how to serve our constituents. Not everyone in the Republican caucus has that individuality anymore because their primaries were bought.
Gina, may I add something to that? I think the other thing that really separates how the Democratic caucus is dealing with some of our internal questions, and we're not all on precisely the same page, but the big difference is none of us are reaching out to our PAC buddies and asking them to send attack messages against our colleagues. We have, the moment the speaker race is over, you have 62 Democrats fighting for public education, fighting for infrastructure, fighting for health care. They don't have that. They are going to be at each other's throats all session long.
Yes.
There's nevertheless a great deal of stake for Democrats, including possibly getting someone who's not going to allow Democratic chairs on committees. So I would think that y'all already have a course in mind before the vote.
There will be a vote on that question when we vote on the House rules, and so we will see what happens this week on that issue. That is a long-standing Texas House tradition, but there will be a vote on that this week.
Of the two Republicans in the race, then who is the least objectionable from
No, I'm going to go to the next question. Yes?
I want to talk about the budget as Representative Howard mentioned, that we're going to hear from the Comptroller's office. Really, it's for anyone. Last session, we had a $32 billion surplus, and so many of the priorities that you guys outlined specifically when it came to
public education weren't really invested in. And that was with $32 billion. So how confident are you that whatever we hear later today from the Comptroller's office, how confident are you that that's actually going to go towards the priorities that you've outlined?
I'm confident in what we as Democrats are going to be working on. The $33 billion, rounding it, that we had in surplus, again, included general revenue dedicated funds that couldn't be used. It included federal funds that had supplanted the budget. So part of what we want to see happening, too, is that we get honest about what's going on with the budget, that we talk about it in real terms, using real numbers, and that we talk about how can we best use this to invest in Texans. I think, unfortunately, with public education, obviously, that was a political maneuver that hurt Texas children and families. I hope that won't be repeated. We did, I will say, I am grateful to this body for last session. We did invest more in women's health care than we had ever done before. So there were some gains made last time. I expect more gains to be made this time with probably less of a surplus, although we'll see when Hager talks later today what that number is going to be. But again, I think the message here is that we are all going to stand together to work for investing in Texans so that Texans can thrive.
Representative, you all voiced a lot of concerns about the amount of money being spent from outside interests. Why not put forward some like ethics or campaign finance reform ideas?
I filed it. I can say I've filed campaign contribution limits bill. This isn't my first session to do that. I know Rep. Goodwin, I'm not sure if I think she's filed legislation, but if not, I know she's filed amendments on the floor. I will say we'll have opportunity for a robust conversation about this because Texas Ethics Commission is up for sunset, which I am enthusiastically looking forward to. It sets campaign contribution limits for each individual election, 5,000 individual, 10,000 from a PAC. So not higher than the federal limits, but I think a much more reasonable number than no limit whatsoever. And we see donations in the millions. And I think the thing is there's nothing ethical about one person being able to single-handedly fund somebody's campaign. We as legislators, do consider ourselves independent from our donors, but I don't know how somebody maintains that position when they are literally solely funded by one single individual.
Okay, we'll take two more questions. Yes.
How much of an uphill battle do you all think the fight against vouchers is going to be with the governor saying he's got the votes to pass it? What's the response to that?
I'll say my perspective on this. My perspective is it is clear to me that the people of Texas do not want vouchers. You will even look at the Republican Party platform. It is not a priority in their Republican Party platform. Last session, I worked closely with MAGA mothers to defeat vouchers. In coalition, we all work to defeat vouchers. Vouchers are the priority of Governor Abbott and out-of-state billionaires. And until I see a groundswell of Texans voice that they want vouchers, I think it'll be an uphill battle.
So last year you had a chance to pass vouchers along with some teacher pay raises and other things that were attached to the bill. This time around, it looks like, or I would expect that they wouldn't need to do that in order to try to buy votes or get votes, whichever way you want to say it. Would last year's package have been better than what we possibly would get this year? And if we're going to end up with vouchers anyways, wouldn't you still like the decision of last year's decision to kill vouchers, but also not get teacher pay raises?
So first, let me say that I do not think vouchers are inevitable. So I do disagree with that statement. But last session, Governor Abbott insisted that the voucher vote be tied to school funding in one bill. And our House leadership honored that request. We had a member, actually Representative Allison, who asked the last day that we met of Speaker Phelan, can we please pass the Senate's school finance bill, because the Senate did not honor the governor's request. That didn't happen. He was defeated in a primary last session. So the author pushed put those things together, and when we voted for an amendment that took out the voucher from the school funding bill, he pulled down the entirety of the bill, and we did not have a chance to vote on any of those things. So to be clear, it was not within our control to vote for those things. This session, we're hearing all sorts of things. I'm not sure if those things will be tied together, but I do know with the governor facing his reelection this coming in 2026, I think it'll be harder for him to deny more money for our schools and teacher pay raises if his voucher doesn't pass. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And our position is fund the public education first, and then let's talk about it.